Convene from executive session, but no action on item 15A, no action. And item 15B, the chair will move to appoint former Commissioner Ron Marchant to replace Barbara Gailey on the MHMR board under the judge's appointment. The chair will move for approval. Second by Commissioner Williams. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have an appointment in Precinct 2. There's a vacancy. Commissioner Falker would like to make an appointment.
Yes, thank you so much, Judge. I'd like to appoint Patricia Dunn into that position, reappoint. All
right, we have a motion and the chair will second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Ashley, did you get those? Okay, she's filling in over there. Oh, sorry. All right, let's go back to our budget item for our 10 a.m. hearing. Now we'll go ahead and open up item 7A, which is at 10 a.m. a presentation of the fiscal year 2024 recommended budget and any appropriate action. And I'd like to welcome Alejandro, our county budget director. Welcome. I want to thank you in advance for all your hard work and that of your office and everyone involved, so to get us to this point today. So go right ahead.
Thank you, Judge, and good morning, Judge and Commissioners. Yes, well, I'm pleased to have this opportunity to be presenting many of the things that we've been able to accomplish as part of the FY 2024 recommended budget. As you know, every year brings with it its own set of challenges, and this year, of course, was no different. The recruitment and retention of county employees does continue to be a top priority, not only in regard to our civilian employees, but also regarding our law enforcement personnel, as you'll see in the following slide. In addition to that, the population in Denton County does continue to rapidly increase, and that is actually what's driving a lot of the positions that are being included in the recommended budget. The cost of living also continues to go up, and as it does, that it's what's driving a lot of the increase in maintenance and operation for a lot of our county departments. You're seeing the increase as a direct impact of inflation. But really one of the major highlights of the county budget is how much we're able to accomplish while at the same time lowering the tax rate. The budget does include a 5% slide of the non-law enforcement pay scales, and as mentioned, this does provide a cost of living adjustment for our county employees, while at the same time it does keep those salaries competitive in the market. The budget also includes a 14% slide of the law enforcement pay scale, which is the equivalent of 2 pay grades. And of course, this is something that the Commissioner's Court has been consistent in addressing. As you recall, last year, the budget did include the market reclassifications of detention officers, specifically to address recruitment and retention issues in the county jail. The year prior to that, the budget also included several market reclassifications for the majority of law enforcement positions in the budget as well. So this 14% slide of the law enforcement pay scale, once again, helps to keep those salaries competitive in the market. The recommended budget also includes several positions for the juvenile department. This is a direct impact of the population growth, as we are including those positions necessary to continue to meet state mandated ratios between our juveniles and our juvenile supervision officers. And of course, as discussed in prior years, we're also increasing our permanent improvement fund funding so that we can have that ability to continue to fund capital projects utilizing cash on hand as opposed to issuing debt. So we are increasing our permanent improvement fund while at the same time decreasing the debt rate. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to our county auditor, Jeff May, and he's going to be going over the revenue portion of the presentation.
Hello, Judge and Commissioners. It's great to be back here again for budget. And again, I want to say it's been a pleasure working with Alejandro and his staff. And I really enjoy the people here at Denton County. And anyway, I wanted to start off, we'll talk about, we classified all of our revenues into 8 categories. And really one of them is not revenues, it's a funding source. But you're familiar with property taxes, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But our motor vehicle registration, we have 2 big fees. These are collected by the tax office, and One of them is the additional 5% registration, and I estimated $8.3 million in the budget for 2024 for that. And the supplemental vehicle registration is what it's called, and that's $7.2 million. And that particular fee comes in a check once a year from the tax office, as per statute. Then we have intergovernmental revenues, and this consists of course, it has our grants, but actually the largest, and by the way, most of our grants are not in the adopted budget. They're usually done separate, and y'all see that when it comes up. But the largest, in the budget, the largest intergovernmental revenue is our mixed beverage tax, and we don't talk about that very much in here, but the mixed beverage tax is a tax that the state collects and then disperses to the counties. And in 2024, I estimated $3.5 million for that tax, and that one's been going up dramatically. So we also, WIC is normally our largest grant. We're still, I was wanting to talk about our, we have our ARPA funds, and the way that we record the revenue for that is we don't recognize the revenue until we actually utilize the funds. So, so you'll see that kind of spread out over a 4-year period. And we also have contracts, and one of the largest contracts we have, for example, is our communications contracts with, I believe that's with the Sheriff's Office, with other entities, and that's $600,000 that we collect a year. And then we also have like an inmate transfer from the Sheriff's Office, and to transfer, I guess, inmates from other locales, and then we get paid for it. And then our fees, I wanted to talk about that for a minute, but the bulk of our fees are actually collected by our county clerk, and of course she has different divisions in her office. Of course, you know, you have the courts, but she also has the vitals, or the birth certificates, the land, and the land records. And that is $9.3 million of our budget. The next highest tax, or the next highest fee collector is the tax office, and that's $3.2 million. And that's actually charging the other entities in the county to collect their taxes. And but anyway, and then our, I looked at our records fees. We have 9 accounts that we record record fees, but we've collected $2.5 million, and these fees are collected in our, mostly in our courts, and then they go into various funds and to help manage the records and help restore them and things like that. And then we have fines, and I'll talk a little bit more about fines in a minute, but that's all from the courts. And I'm going to talk about interest in a minute also. Now and we have miscellaneous, and that's kind of the catch-all for everything else. And you'll see how much, I'll show you a pie chart in a second on these, but that includes like sale of property, donations, attorney refunds for indigent defense is a big one in there. That's about $200,000. Insurance claims and lawsuit settlements. And usually the insurance claims and the lawsuit settlements, I don't have an estimate for that in the budget. So those are, that's gravy when we get it. So now on the next slide, let's see. Here we go. Here's the pie chart that I promised. And you see 75% of our revenues are property taxes. And then you see fund balance on there, which again, fund balance is not a revenue, but it is a funding source because we can dip into our fund balance to balance our budget. Now, most of this fund balance you see there, the vast majority comes from special revenue funds that we build up and then utilize the extra funds for certain things that are authorized by those funds through statute. We also have, let's see, you see the breakdown of everything else. The intergovernmental, it shows 3%. Again, that's not, most of our grants are not in the budget, so that number is actually going to be bigger when we see the actuals because of that. So anyway, that's the breakdown. And here's what our numbers look like for the past 3 years. And you see, I was wanting to talk first about, let me see, I have my notes. The property taxes. Back when we adopted the tax freeze a couple of years ago, there was some, I don't know how to say that, there was some changes in the tax rate calculation that caused our estimates to be low, very low for the last 2 years compared to prior years. And this is because when we adopted the freeze, and one of the biggest things we had to add on deferrals and other things. And when we received the numbers from the tax office, they're presented in a worst case scenario. So we tend to collect more than what we estimate. And I've been talking to Alejandro about maybe finding ways to estimate what the additional collections were and maybe in future years or something like that. But because of that, this $297 million in 2024, I really think it's a low-end estimate because of that. So I think it could be as high as 10 million more than that once we're actually collected. So we're going to look into that in future years.
Jeff,
I wanted to point out the intergovernmental revenue. You see that's
can I ask
really
you a
big.
question?
Yes,
Jeff,
you
you mind?
bet.
So that answers, I think, part of it, because the budget, because we had some significant growth, so even with a no new revenue rate, which this is all based on the recommended tax rate, right?
That's correct.
So that's really the difference, because we did have a significant amount of new growth, right?
That's correct.
And that's why you think there's probably a
Yeah,
discrepancy.
and also the 2023 estimate was a lot higher than we originally estimated also. In fact,
Okay.
I was just looking at the numbers in our general fund. It was actually $13 million higher. So the estimate was much lower than that.
So if we had looked at, if you had budget on here for 23, it would look, you could see
That's
where
right.
we've grown, right?
That's right.
So,
Yeah, and this is not exactly apples to apples because you're seeing actuals and estimates. So
yeah, got
so
it.
that's kind of what the difference
And
is.
then secondly, and you may actually get this, you kind of touched on it, so, because in this one, you've got the 29.9 million out of fund balance,
Yes.
and are you going to speak to where
Yeah,
that?
we can talk about that, but yeah, the vast majority of that comes from special revenue funds that
As
have,
you were just
yeah,
mentioning.
built up balances, and now they're budgeted this year. And sometimes some of those special revenue funds we let build up. We do that a lot in our records management funds and things like that, and let them build up and then do a big project.
And I just want to make sure that as we're looking at those, because those are not necessarily recurring funds, right? So,
That's correct. Well, the records management, the revenues are reoccurring. But,
okay. So some
but
of
the
it is.
Yes.
We just haven't, like the last 2 years, we haven't used any of it.
That's correct. So the expenditures are inconsistent from year to year, but the revenues are
Got it.
usually.
Jeff,
Yes.
could I ask why we are estimating that the fines will be going down? Or do we have fewer crimes?
There's several factors in that. One of the biggest ones is legislation where people can pay their fines through community service and things like that. And that passed maybe, 4 to 6 years ago, something like that. There's been some other factors in there too, like collection. Now they can pay their fines out over time, so we don't collect everything all up front. And that plays a factor in there too. So, when I was looking into it, those were probably the biggest factors, and the fees are also impacted by that. And the fees have not necessarily taken off either, as you can see on there.
Do we have any trouble collecting the fines that are imposed by our courts, I presume?
Yeah,
sometimes.
there's times like if someone is sent off to prison, you're probably not going to collect that for a long time. But they work through the probation office usually if they're convicted, and the probation department works on collecting those. And I don't have the numbers, but you know, sometimes people run off and disappear, and like I say, I don't have the information for that this morning, but,
Okay.
but,
That's all right, thank
I
you.
would say there probably is trouble collecting them, but most of them, I believe, are paying.
Thank you.
And to follow up on that, we don't use a collection agency, do we, or do we?
We do.
We do,
Well,
okay, I was just curious.
I'm not, do we in the county district clerk? I don't think we do for them. We do for the tax office.
Right, but not for the
And we do for
fines.
the JP, I believe, so, at least one of them. So, so it's possible. I'd have to look at that. I don't know if our county, okay.
And Jeff, do you mind me following back up on the fund balance? So, I'm glad to hear some of those are recurring, but are the ones that aren't, are those expenses this year ones that we're also seeing is not necessarily recurring? I just want to make sure that we don't leave ourselves in a lurch next year, right?
Yes, usually when, in the special revenue funds, they come up with a project that's not reoccurring.
So
the
that's
expenditures are
that's
not
the
reoccurring.
key is, so the expenses that we're
That's
using
right.
those for are also not recurring. Okay,
And most of those revenues are reoccurring. There's one or
Okay.
two that are not, that are maybe inconsistent from year to year.
okay,
But
good.
they usually don't budget it until they can't budget it until they have the funds available, so.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Kevin, we watched that fund balance because it was down a long time ago when I first got on court, and we watched that every year to make sure
Good.
that we keep money there.
Yeah.
Let's see, and anyway, I wanted to point out on the intergovernmental revenue, again, we're comparing actuals to estimates to budget. The estimates in the budget don't include ARPA funds, but the actuals in that 22 million do. That's why you see that is so high. That was actually CARES money back in 2022, I believe. And then I wanted to point out the interest earnings, and actually, before I do that, I want to go back up to the tax collections. I had another slide on here. This is it. This actually came out of our ACFR, our annual report. And I wanted to point out, I know it's a lot of numbers, but if you see that column in the middle with the percentages, that shows what the percentage of the tax collections were every year over the past 10 years. And then that last column with the percentage, you see what was collected, including this year. So the first percentage is what they collected in the year the tax was levied. The last one is what they've collected even after the tax was levied. And you see a lot of 99.9s and 99.8, so eventually our taxes get collected. And I wanted to point out, first of all, our tax office does a great job when you see these 98s and 99s. Not all counties have that. So our citizens pay their taxes, and our tax assessor collector does a great job on collecting. And but I wanted to point this out too, because you do see where we're collecting taxes for prior years this year, and that's also not included when we estimate the tax revenue. So that's additional funds. There's some other factors too that can create additional tax collections, like there could be agriculture exemption losses because they have to pay 5 years of taxes when they convert their agricultural property to anything else. Also, when we have our certified numbers, usually by law they have to have 95% certified. One year we had a certified estimate, so it was less than that. But when those get settled, when we adopt the tax rate, it's based on the worst case scenario, assuming that we lose all those cases, and that's not what happens. We usually, bring in additional revenue. That's not included in the estimate. And then the penalties and interest for these late payments that you see are not included. And there's some other things too. So I just wanted to point that out. I expect our tax collections to be higher, and I'm going to work with Alejandro to come up with a way to maybe estimate that, and we'll figure that out. Another thing I was really wanting to talk about, and this is interest earnings. And this year, our interest earnings, you see the 2023 estimate, it's expected, in the slide, it's, shows 13.8 million. And I expect it to be a little bit higher than that. So, but you see that's much, much higher than we've had in prior years. And next, for 2024, I estimated around 9 million in that ballpark. I kind of think it's going to be a lot higher. I do have a lot of concerns with us relying on investment earnings to balance the budget because, as you can see from this slide, you know, sometimes they're not there, so they can be very inconsistent. So I was working with Alejandro to maybe come up with a way to deal with that and maybe not use these interest earnings completely to balance the budget in the future or something like that. So we'll probably have that discussion next year. But I wanted to point this out because, and this 9 million for 2024, I think is extremely conservative estimate. So, so anyway, we'll talk about that and probably next year and figure out how to deal with that.
I think that's a good idea. When you have something volatile like that, I think it's better not to always just.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know that Denton County went through back in the, around 2008, 2009, 10, when interest rates just dropped, and so did the investment earnings. That was very painful, yeah.
Jeff, what are we earning now, approximately, what interest rate?
It's around 4.5% to 4.6%, depending on our investments, but I think that's what the pools are paying in that range. And of course, that changes every day. But,
right.
So, and by the way, when we started the fiscal year, you know, if I recall, they were around maybe 0.5%. So our interest rates have just skyrocketed this year and just created all kinds of, in some cases, chaos that had to do with a lot with these bank failures you heard about earlier.
Right.
So anyway, so that's something that we need to watch in future years. I just wanted to point out this transfer in 2022 of the 31 million. That had to do with CARES money when we reimbursed the general fund for payroll. And I think I covered everything. Do y'all have any other questions for me?
All right, thank you,
Okay,
Jeff.
well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Commissioners, if you look at this slide here, you'll see a comparison of the FY 2023 adopted budget and the FY 2024 recommended budget by fund. So as you can see here, the budget is increasing by 24.4 million, which is a 6.57% increase. Of course, the majority of the budget is in the general fund. As you can see at the top there, the general fund does make up approximately 2/3 of the budget. The general fund is increasing by 6.5 million. And if you look at the row right below the general fund, you'll notice a 100% increase in the CSED fund. That is not a new $1 million impact. All we're doing here is separating out the CSED fund or CSED expenditures from the general fund into their own fund based on discussions with the county auditor just to be able to track those expenses separately. But if you look towards the bottom of the chart, you will see that really the largest increase in terms of dollars is in the debt service fund. That is the budget for FY 2024 necessary for us to continue to meet our required debt obligations. Though, as I did previously mention, even though our debt service budget is going up, our debt rate is still decreasing, and that's due to the increase in both taxable values as well as the required use of our excess debt collections. And so, but overall, as I mentioned, the budget is going up by 24.4 million, the majority of which is being covered through revenue received from new property as well as non-tax revenue. So as we've gone through the presentation, you'll see just how much new construction is happening in Denton County, which is providing the revenue to cover that, that increase.
Alejandro, on the debt service, some of that is because of the higher interest rates as well, right? The way the so the debt service budget is made up of all. Or are you speaking about the
the revenue received into the debt service fund?
No, the actual, since we've got in our budget the 84 million or whatever, but isn't some of that because they're, as compared to prior years?
Do you mind
Because
if I
the,
address that?
okay.
Actually, that hasn't impacted our budget
Okay,
yet because
it
we
ha-
haven't really issued a lot of debt since the interest rates have gone up.
I knew
so-
we issued the 100 million or
Yes.
110 or
Yeah,
whatever, but,
and even the interest rates have gone up dramatically even since then.
Sure,
But,
yeah.
but that's really the only one that we've issued since then. And in the future, if interest rates are high and then they drop, we do have the option of
Sure,
refunding, which
sure.
we've utilized that frequently since I've been
okay,
here.
very good, thank you.
The next few slides will show that a total $24 million increase broken out by area. So as I mentioned at the top there, you will see that debt service does make up the majority of that increase, though that is strictly funded through the debt rate, whereas the other areas of impact that you'll see are either funded through the non-tax revenue or the M&O rate, which is what has that 3.5% cap on it. So the next largest increase is in the public safety category, which is increasing by 3.4 million. Some of that is due to the fact that we are increasing the minimum starting salaries for law enforcement, as previously mentioned. And we're also seeing the impact of inflation in various public safety budgets. So we are increasing the funding for inmate food, as well as budgeting a portion for out-of-county inmate expenses, as you've probably seen the budget amendments go through court this fiscal year. So we're budgeting a portion of that to reduce some of those required budget amendments. We're also increasing the funding for fire rescue services, which is used for fire rescue calls. And we're also seeing an increase in ambulance transportation. All of that is related to the increase in population in unincorporated areas of Denton County. And we're also including some positions for public safety for our sheriff's office, as well as for the previously mentioned juvenile department to meet those state mandated ratios. We're seeing a $2.4 million increase in the judicial and legal category. That is due to the fact that we are including 5 positions for the district attorney's office, directly related to the increase in filings, as well as to the fact that they are going to assist with the second grand jury. Denton County does currently have a grand jury with grand jurors that meet once per week to hear felony cases for indictment. So the number of filings has simply reached a point where we need to allocate these positions to make a second grand jury feasible. And the rest of this increase can be related to court-related expenditures, which includes things such as court-appointed attorneys. A lot of these judicial expenses can be considered unfunded mandates. And we're seeing an increase of 1.7 million in the road and bridge and road improvements category. That is due to the fact that we are increasing the permanent improvement fund by 1 million, which is being allocated specifically for roads, with the rest of this increase being in the road and bridge fund. We are seeing the impact of inflation in the road and bridge fund as well, so we're allocating funding provided to continue to fund road materials and equipment needed for road maintenance. We're seeing a $1.2 million increase in the public facilities category, which is due to the fact that we are adding 5 new positions for the facilities management department. That is a direct result of just the growth of Denton County. So these positions will be assisting with an increase in work orders that the facilities management department has. And of course, a lot of this other increase is also needed due to, once again, the impact of inflation, as the cost that it's taking to provide building maintenance is going up. So we're including funding for the continued purchase of supplies that the facilities management department uses for this building maintenance. And of course, we're seeing an increase in building utilities as well. Water, gas, electricity, all of these things are continuing to increase. So we are allocating the funding to continue to meet these required building-related expenses.
Alejandro, if you don't mind,
Yes, sir.
I just thought I'd mention for anyone who might be listening on the public safety, because we have the increasing salaries for law enforcement, which is, I think, very crucial for it, because we've got the sheriff has so many vacancies, especially in the detention officer category. But that out-of-county inmate expense, the goal is that will be going down. I know he doesn't want to send those out if we don't have to, right? And so, but it takes a little while to build that up, right? So we're hoping that in the future there'll be a lot less of that. But And we're also hopeful because we had a lot of DOs in recent weeks that have been hired, so it's a good job, Sheriff.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
Thank you.
We're seeing an increase of $1 million in the general administration category. We are including an additional position in the purchasing department, and we're also seeing the deferred impact of some positions that were added in the purchasing department the prior year, which were added with a prorated start date. So that did result in some savings to the county, and so we're now budgeting those positions for the full fiscal year for FY 2024. We're also continuing to see the increase in the cost of vehicles, so we are including an additional funding for the replacement of county vehicles. And we're just seeing a general increase in various maintenance and operation categories for things such as a required postage for departments such as the county clerk's department, as an example. We're also increasing the open space category by $1 million. As you recall, last year we did include $1 million in open space, which is available in the Permanent Improvement Fund. So in one of these future slides, you're going to see a breakdown of the Permanent Improvement Fund with all of these categories, including this open space category in it. We're seeing an increase of $645,000 for elections. That is due to the fact that we do have a presidential primary year, with the rest of this increase being as a result of the increase in population in Denton County, which results in increases in funding needed for supplies such as paper ballots and other election-related expenses. We are also budgeting an interfund transfer. This is related to the previously mentioned CSCD fund. So because we're all separating out those CSCD expenses into their own fund, we're budgeting a transfer from the general fund that's going into this CSCD fund. But it's not really it's budgeted as an expenditure, but the actual expenditures are budgeted within the CSCD fund itself. So you shouldn't see this transfer in future years.
Alejandro, the 420 versus the 1 million that's in the budget, is that what is that?
The 1 million is probably the budget. Okay. The million is for CSCD.
Right.
So that 1 million is related to CSCD expenditures. This 420,000 is being budgeted in the transfer from the general fund department. So what that's doing is it's providing 420,000 from the general fund that's going into CSCD. So it's being accounted for as a revenue source, with the other revenues coming from fees that CSCD collects, which totals that 1 million being budgeted in CSCD.
Thank you.
We're seeing a $319,000 increase in financial administration. This is mostly the impact of the 5% slide of the pay scale, but we're also are rebudgeting 2 positions in the tax office, which we previously left vacant while working with the tax office, just as a cost-saving strategy. So it did result in a savings for the county for a period of time, and we're now just rebudgeting those positions so that the tax office can fill them and assist with their workload. We're seeing an increase in 277,000 other small funds and departments. These are all the other various small departments that don't fit into one of these other categories, but really the vast majority of this is located in the Records Management and Preservation Fund, of course, which is utilized for the preservation of government records. In the public health category, this increase really is mainly related to the 5% impact of the slide of the pay scale. The intergovernmental category is going up by 246,000, while the per capita rate for the libraries is not increasing. The only increase they are receiving is related to the increase in population in Denton County. And we're also seeing an increase in child safety programs. What this is we do receive a revenue from fees collected from auto registration, and we're statutorily required to provide that funding to municipalities to use for child safety programs, which would be things like school crossing guard program, as an example. And we're also seeing a small increase for the Denton Central Appraisal District budget. Of course, it's just an estimate at this point. The final payment to the appraisal district won't be known until all of the entities have adopted their budgets and their tax rates. And the increase you'll see here that's going to the social service agencies, that the increase that we're receiving from the tobacco settlement distribution, as the funding that is provided to the social service agencies is funding that we receive directly from that distribution. And you'll see that there is an increase in forfeiture funds. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're receiving a decrease in the amount of forfeiture funds. All this is that we're budgeting a decrease for next year just based off of request of the Sheriff's Office. And but you will see that there is a large decrease in the technology services category. That is due to the fact that we are intending to utilize some excess tax notes from completed tax notes projects for some of these capital technology equipment. And so what that's allowing us to do is reduce the budget for technology services, which reduces the impact to the tax rate. But all of these do make up the total $24 million increase. And of course, these categories do include the impact of the 5% slide of non-law enforcement pay scale and the 14% slide of the law enforcement pay scale. On this next slide, you'll see a breakdown of county services. And as you can see here, over 90% of the services that Denton County provides can be considered mandated and essential. Within blue there, that represents the mandated services, which is 55% of county expenditures, which includes things such as the cost it takes to operate our county jail, to run our sheriff's office, to run our elections, those services that are considered mandated. Whereas in orange, that represents services that are not mandated but considered essential, like our purchasing department and our human resources department, those expenses essential for running county operations. With the orange portion there representing 9% of county services that are considered non-mandated. So those would be things like I just mentioned, the social service agencies, which aren't considered mandated. It's not an impact to the tax rate, but it does provide a benefit to the public. And on this slide, you'll see our expenditures broken down by category. So as you can see here, 40% of total expenditures in the recommended budget are made up of salary and benefits, with 52% being made up of M&O, which is all expenditures aside from salary and benefits and capital equipment. So as you can see, their capital equipment does make up 1% of total expenditures for FY 2024. And that capital category includes things like road maintenance equipment and the replacement of county vehicles, but it does not include capital projects which are funded through our bond program. On this next slide, you see a breakdown of our non-departmental contingency summary. This is kind of like having our county savings account. The total budget for FY 2024 remains approximately the same as the prior year for contingency. There were a couple of contingencies that shifted around. We did increase fire call contingency slightly due to a recommendation from our fire marshal. And we also increased our personnel contingency slightly, but overall the total contingency amount remains approximately the same as the prior year. And I referenced this slide earlier. This is the breakdown of our permanent improvement fund for FY 2024. The total budget for the permanent improvement fund did increase by $2 million. $1 million went to the, as you can see in that green slice there, to open space, with the other $1 million increase going to road planning, which you can see in gray there. So a road planning budget for FY 2024 is $6 million. The current tax levy for FY 2024 for this fund is $10 million. And one other thing I wanted to mention is even though the budget is $17.4 million for the permanent improvement fund, we still have an available $17.5 million that's available within the permanent improvement fund fund balance as well.
Can you repeat that, Alejandro?
Yes, sir. So in addition to the budget for the permanent improvement fund of $17.4 million, there's an additional $17.5 million that's available in fund balance that's not being utilized.
And fund balance over our standard, is it 90-day or whatever our fund balance?
Oh, right, exactly. Yeah, that amount can be utilized if it's ever needed for a capital project. It can be allocated and budgeted, and we would still have sufficient to cover the 90-day requirement. Yes.
Got it, thank you.
On this next slide, you see our total salary revisions for FY 2024. Of course, the title changes don't carry with them a financial impact. But under the title changes, you'll see that we are including 31 out of 53 requested reclassifications. Last year, for reference, we included 40 reclassifications in the budget. For market adjustments, we did have a significant higher amount of market adjustments in the prior year, but as I did mention, that was due to the fact that we did the market adjustments for the detention officers. So that's what caused that increase the prior year. But overall, we are including 58 out of a requested 80 salary revisions in next year's budget. And as part of the initial request budget, we did receive a total of 67.75 full-time equivalent requests for positions. And out of those, we did include 40% of them, or 26.75 full-time equivalent positions in the recommended budget. This is the third lowest number of positions that have been added to the budget within the last 10 years. And for reference, the prior year, we added 36 new positions into the budget. So this is about approximately 10 less than were added the prior year.
I'm sorry, I was back on the
Yes, sir.
market adjustments. The law enforcement 14% is essentially a market adjustment, but it's a little different, I guess, than the market adjustments that are listed here.
Yes, sir. Last year, we did, for those market adjustments for the detention officers, we did increase the pay grade we reclassed those positions by 2 pay grades. This year, we are increasing the minimums of the starting salaries by 14%, but those positions are keeping the same pay grade. So that's the difference in how we're treating those two, the increases for these positions.
In fact, it's all market. It's the same
Yeah,
thing.
we're
It's
just categorizing them
terminology.
differently. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And on this next slide, you'll see the breakdown of those departments that are receiving new positions. So you'll see here on the left-hand column, the departments that are receiving 1 new position as part of the FY 2024 recommended budget. On the right-hand column, you'll see those departments that are receiving 2 or more new positions. If we look at those that are receiving 2 or more positions, as I did mention, the Criminal District Attorney's Office is receiving those positions due to an increase in filings as well as that second grand jury. With facilities management receiving those 5 positions to assist with their workload. And the juvenile department, once again, is receiving the 8 full-time positions and 1 part-time position, primarily for us to continue to meet those state-mandated ratios. And the sheriff's office is receiving 2 new positions, 1 for their operations division and 1 for their justice management division. So a total of 26.75 full-time equivalent positions being included in next year's budget. And then this slide shows a comparison of those positions in a way. This is showing the number of employees per capita in Denton County. So as you can see there, the number of employees per capita for FY 2024 is 1.94. That's 1.94 positions for every 1,000 residents in Denton County. So that is decreasing by 4% from the prior year, or a 15% decrease between FY 2015 and FY 2024. So that per capita rate has steadily continued to decrease as the population in Denton County continues to go up, but we continue to remain fairly efficient in the number of positions that we add to the budget year after year. And on this next slide, you'll see a comparison of that same per capita rate in orange there for Denton County compared to the other top 14 counties in the state of Texas by population. So this is utilizing Denton County's FY 2024 information and the FY 2023 information for these other counties, as they're currently in the middle of their budget process, so we don't have their updated information. But as you can see here, Denton County does have the 3rd lowest number of employees per capita. One also interesting thing to note here is that 5 out of the 6 counties with the lowest number of employee per capita also have the lowest county tax rate. On this slide here, you'll see a 10-year history of the total adjusted taxable value. So this is our total adjusted taxable value, all of our taxable value, excluding new construction, which you'll see on the following slide. But as you can see here, the total adjusted taxable value for tax year 2023 is $147.9 billion. That is a 17% increase from the prior year, or a 150% increase between tax year 2014 and tax year 2023. And for tax year 2023, the total market value of that was $227 billion, 69% of which is residential, 10% of which is commercial, and 21% falls into the other category, which includes things like oil and gas and personal property. So on this slide, you'll see new construction in Denton County. So as you can see here, there is a significant increase in new construction happening in Denton County. As you can see, between tax year 2020 and 2022, that new construction remained pretty steady. And then between tax year 2022 and 2023, you're seeing an 80% increase in the total amount of new construction that's happening. And the total increase between tax year 2024 and 2023 is 411%. So for tax year 2023, the total market value was $11 billion, with 61% of that being residential, 19% of that being commercial, and 20% of that falling into that other category. On this next slide, you'll see a 10-year history of the average home value in Denton County. So as you can see here, for tax year 2023, the average taxable value in Denton County is $448,754. That is an 11.7% increase from the prior year, which is the exact same increase as between 2021 and 2022. The total recommended tax rate for FY 2024 is 0.189485. And for comparison, our current tax rate for FY 2023 is 0.217543. So the tax rate being recommended is a reduction in the tax rate of nearly 3 pennies. And for comparison, the prior year, the reduction in the tax rate was a little over a penny and a half. So this reduction is essentially almost twice the reduction as the prior year in the tax rate.
I think this is important for the citizens to know. We passed that $650 million bond election, and we're still lowering the tax rate.
Exactly.
Yes, Commissioner, this is a significant reduction, and the reason why it's such a significant reduction in the tax rate is because the tax rate included here is the no new revenue tax rate, which is that tax rate that brings Denton County approximately the same amount of revenue as the prior year based on properties taxed in both years. So as you can see here, that recommended tax rate is, of course, below the voter approval tax rate of 0.193879. So once again, almost a 3 penny reduction in the tax rate.
If I might just comment, Alejandro, I received an email from a constituent who had read the Levies' column about the new taxes that we're going to save through legislative compression for school districts and the increase in the homestead exemption. And he said, I certainly hope that you will read the column and notice that he says now it's up to your local governments not to raise their rates so that you can really enjoy this tax decrease. And I told him he needed to watch today and see, because I knew that we would be doing that. So I'm proud of us for being able to do that. And as Commissioner Mitchell said, we passed this wonderful bond issue, but we're not raising your tax rate, we're really decreasing it.
And Commissioner, on this next slide, you'll see an example of someone who has the average home value of $448,754. That individual would be paying a total of $9,400 if they were to live in the city of Denton. As you can see here, about 9% of those taxes would be going to Denton County, with the remaining 91% going to the school district and the city of Denton. So this just really kind of illustrates the difference in tax rates. And once again, the information being utilized for Denton County is based off of our FY 2024 information with the FY 2023 information for the city of Denton and the Denton Independent School District.
Just, it's not ours, but just since it's on here, is the school district calculation based on the new homestead and everything that the legislature?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. It's just based off of FY 2023 information.
So the good news is for someone that's looking at this average will actually even be lower than that.
That's exactly right.
Well, assuming that they vote for it in November.
And so on this slide, you'll see not only the change in the average home value in Denton County, but also the change in our tax rate. So as you can see here, even though the average home value in Denton County is increasing by $46,958, because of the significant reduction in the tax rate, the average Denton County homeowner with a homestead exemption should still see a reduction in their taxes of $22.35. That is an annual savings. So looking at that FY 2024 column, you'll see that if an individual has the average home value of $448,754 based on our FY 2024 recommended tax rate, they would be paying $840.85, which again, if you compare that to last year's dollar figure, that is a reduction. So a significant reduction, but once again, that's just due to the amount that we're reducing the tax rate by. On this next slide, you'll see a comparison of information between top 15 counties in the state by population. So as you can see there in orange, Denton County has exceeded that 1 million population mark based on most recent population estimates from the North Central Texas Council of Governments. Denton County does have the second lowest county tax rate. And we do have the lowest county-wide tax rate, which is those taxes that are assessed county-wide, such as hospital districts and community college districts, as an example. So Denton County only has the one county-wide tax rate. So that's the reason why we have the lowest county-wide tax rate. And then in this following slide, you'll see some of that information graph. This is just the county tax rate. So once again, you can see there in orange that we do have the second lowest county tax rate based off of this comparison, with the Collin County having a lower tax rate. And then this slide here compares the county-wide tax rate information. So here, utilizing the county-wide taxes, Denton County, once again, does have the lowest county-wide tax rate because we don't have any other taxes assessed county-wide. And then this slide here shows a comparison of budget per capita for those same top 15 counties by population. So as you can see here, Denton County does have the second lowest budget per capita. Once again, information for Denton County is based off of FY 2024 with these other budgets, with these other counties who haven't adopted their budgets yet, reflecting information from FY 2023.
Look at that. They're over there in the right. Harris County.
Yeah, you want to be careful about living there.
Commissioners, on this next slide, you'll see a comparison of the county tax rate for the 254 counties in the state of Texas. So this does reflect a current tax rate for FY 2023 for all 254 counties, including Denton County. So the tax rate there in green is our current tax rate. So currently, we do have the 9th lowest county tax rate out of all 254 counties. So we essentially have a lower tax rate than over 96% of all other Texas counties. And this information does come directly from the Texas Comptroller's Office. And so just to reiterate, we are recommending the no new revenue rate, which is resulting in a reduction in the tax rate of nearly 3 pennies, almost double the reduction as the prior year. So our total recommended tax rate is 0.189485, which of course means that does make it the lowest tax rate since 1986. And you'll see that information listed on this next slide here. So this represents our total tax rate going back to 1986. In the blue portion of the bars, you'll see that represents that M&O rate, which once again is what has that 3.5% cap on it, with the orange portion representing the debt rate. So if you look at the 2022 column and the 2023, you'll see that is a significant drop there in the total tax rate. With, of course, in orange there, you'll see that the debt rate, of course, is also decreasing from the prior year. So it is quite a bit of a significant drop in the tax rate. So that does conclude the presentation, and of course, this afternoon, we do have budget workshops. So after Commissioners Court votes on all necessary changes, then the court can vote to propose a tax rate, and if that tax rate proposed is the no new revenue rate, then we only need to schedule a public hearing on the proposed budget, as the public hearing on the proposed tax rate is not necessary if the tax rate that you propose does not exceed the no new revenue rate.
Okay, members, I want to thank you, Alejandro, and the team for all y'all's great efforts on this. I do realize we have further discussions this afternoon, so this is our initial rollout of the budget, so thank you very much for that. Members, are there any questions you have this morning before we break and reconvene at 1 o'clock? Are there any
No,
questions
thank you
y'all
so
may have?
much to you and your team.
Thank
You guys did an excellent job.
All right, hearing none, we are in recess until 1 p.m. Thank you.
Now I want to know what the tax rate was in 1985.
86.